Adam and Eve and the fall. Before the story tells us what humanity did wrong, it tells us what God did right, who He has always been, which is good, a creator who gives life freely, sets boundaries for our protection, sees us when we hide, and even in judgment moves first towards mercy and redemption. In the very beginning, before there were cities or nations, before there was even a single human footprint on the earth, God spoke. By His word, light burst into the darkness, oceans took their place, land rose up, and the sky stretched over everything like a great blue tent. He filled the world with life, trees heavy with fruit, rivers running clear and strong, birds soaring through the air, and animals roaming the plains and forests. Everything God made was not just good, it was very good, overflowing with beauty, order, and peace. God planted a special garden, a place of unique beauty and nearness to Himself. Rivers flowed through it, watering the land. Trees of every kind grew there, pleasing to the eye and rich with food. In this garden, God placed the first man, born from the dust of the ground and brought to life by God's own breath. The man opened his eyes to a world that was already prepared for him. Warm light, soft earth under his feet, and the voice of God speaking his name. God gave the man work that was a joy, not a burden. He was to tend and care for the garden, to watch over it, to learn its paths, its plants, and its creatures. In that garden stood two special trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God gave the man enormous freedom. You may eat from every tree of the garden except one. Only one boundary marked the edge of that freedom. The man was not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God warned him that if he crossed that line, if he ate from that tree, death would enter a world that had only known life. Everything God had made was good, but there was one thing that was not good. The man was alone, so God brought the animals to him. And the man gave each one a name, recognizing their shapes, sounds, and ways. Yet among all these living creatures, there were none like him, no one who could stand beside him as an equal partner. So God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep. And from his own side, God crafted a woman, flesh of his flesh, bone of his bone. When the man awoke and saw her, his heart leapt. Here at last was one who matched him, different and yet the same, a true companion, equal in dignity, joined to him by God's own design. They were naked and unashamed, at ease in their own skin, at peace with God, with each other, and the world around them. But into this peace came a voice that did not come from God. A serpent, more clever and twisted than the other animals, approached the woman with the question, "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" With that subtle twist, the serpent planted suspicion, as if God's generous, every tree but one, or a harsh, "None of these are for you." The woman answered truthfully at first, "They could eat from the trees, just not from the one in the center, and they must not eat it or touch it, or they would die." But the serpent pressed harder, directly contradicting God. "You will not surely die." He suggested something poisonous, that God was holding her back, afraid she would become like him if she ate the fruit. The serpent told her that her eyes would be open and that she would know good and evil for herself, as if God's heart toward her were stingy and controlling. Now the woman looked at the tree again, but with new thoughts in her mind. The fruit was beautiful, appealing, and the idea of gaining wisdom on her own terms tugged at her desires. She took the fruit and ate it. Then she gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate as well. In that moment, their eyes were open, but not in the way that they had hoped. Instead of becoming more like God in goodness and wisdom, they became acutely aware of their own vulnerability and shame. Suddenly, they felt exposed. The innocence that once made nakedness natural now gave way to fear and self-consciousness. They sewed fig leaves together to cover themselves, trying to hide from one another. When they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, the place that had once been their delight became a place of dread. They hid among the trees that God Himself had planted, as if branches and leaves could shield them from the one who had formed them in the first place. God called out to the man, "Where are you?" It was not the question of someone lacking knowledge, but of a loving God calling a broken child out of hiding. The man answered that he was afraid because he was naked, so he hid. God asked the piercing question, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree I commanded you not to eat from?"
I wear the silence like a stain. Every word I spoke feels staged. I kissed the truth and turned away. Now the mirror knows my name.
Instead of owning his choice, the man shifted the blame. He pointed to the woman and even toward God, saying that the woman God had given him the fruit. When God turned to the woman, he in turn blamed the serpent. "The serpent deceived me and I ate." The harmony between them shattered into accusation and self-defense. God then spoke judgment, not out of cruelty, but as the truthful naming of what sin had unleashed. To the serpent, he pronounced a curse and promised a long struggle between the serpent and the woman's offspring, with the hint that one day a descendant would crush the serpent's head even as he was wounded. With the woman, God spoke of pain in childbirth, intention mixed with desire in her relationship with the man. To the man, God declared that the ground itself would now resist him. Work would remain, but it would be laced with sweat, frustration, and thorns. Where there had been only life, now death was certain. You are dust, and to dust you will return. The world was still God's world, but now it was a fallen one, a good creation twisted by human rebellion. Yet even as God named these consequences, there were quiet signs of mercy. God himself made garments of skin for the man and the woman and clothed them, covering their shame more fully than their fragile fig leaves ever could. He sent them out of the garden, away from the tree of life, not as an act of petty cruelty, but so they would not live forever in this broken, sinful state. A flaming sword and cherubim were placed to guard the way back, closing the gate behind them. They stepped out into a harsher world, still under God's rule, still echoing his beauty, but now marked by sorrow, struggle, and death. Yet the promise remained, an offspring who would one day confront the serpent, deal with evil, and open a way for broken humans to walk with God again.